Okay, so let's talk about the very last section of the paper. This is the conclusion. Conclusions are my personal favorite. I love writing them and I love teaching them because I know a lot of you are like, what do I say? Like, I've already said everything. And it can be frustrating and boring and repetitive. So, I have some things to, some tips and tricks to make conclusions really interesting and fun, as well as different. So I know not every teacher teaches conclusions this way. So if you're like, I've never heard this, don't be overwhelmed. Not every essay can have the same kind of conclusion, but I think in this case, since it's about intolerance and fear and stereotypes, those are all things we've personally experienced before, I think, especially being in a high school. So I really want to add a personal touch to it because it is such a personal topic. So but before we get to that, you'll start your paragraph with a counterpoint. You are going to avoid at all costs the in conclusion. No, it's not good. It's a bad transition. I know that's what you were taught, but it's clunky and it's boring. It ruins the whole conclusion. So instead, you're going to start with the counterpoint, which actually works as a great transition. So if we look here, here's my example. Some might say that these negative outcomes of stereotypes and intolerance can be outweighed by the benefits of them. We need to be able to make judgment calls about people in order to stay safe or decide who we want to spend our time with. While this may be true to some extent, the negative impacts of stereotypes and intolerance are far too dangerous to ignore. So I'm going to put that in pink. So that looks really similar to the other ones. That is my counterpoint. Sorry. Whew, that's my counterpoint. So a counterpoint is just thinking, what would the other side say? So my argument is that stereotypes are really negative and harmful. So someone might say, whoa, 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 we have to have stereotypes in order to protect ourselves. That's how we make judgment calls. And then, that's kind of the other side. So if yours is, how does intolerance affect individuals? You could talk about, well, maybe some people say, well, what if stereotypes help you rise to the challenge and make you better? Or what if someone has a good stereotype on you? Or with communities, you could talk about, well, not all communities crumble because of fear. Some get along really well. And that's kind of your counterpoint. And then this part, while this may be true to some extent, you can use that exact phrase. In fact, I recommend it. So you're giving credit where credit's due. It's like, yes, you're not wrong. And then you need to explain why you are more right than the other side. So the negative impacts of stereotypes and intolerance are too dangerous to ignore. So I'm like, yeah, you're right. But just because they have some good things doesn't mean the bad things aren't worse than the good things are good. So the key things to note here are some might say. I think everyone should start their paragraph this way if you're not sure. There are other ways to start it, but this is like an easy jump in. And so it's more interesting. You're like, oh, what do some say? What's the counterpoint? So you're kind of changing topics in a more interesting way. And then while this may be true to some extent, you can use that phrase. You can use a different one to be like, yes, but. And then what's cool, so not only is it a great transition to the paragraph, to the conclusion paragraph, it also gives you a reason to restate your claim. So I know you guys are always like you have to do it. But now it makes sense because I'm like, well, you're right, but also you're wrong. Because remember, stereotypes and intolerance lead to a society that's tense and divided among personal opinion, to individuals who are isolated and depressed. So this is, sorry, that's not part of my claim, my bad. The counterpoint is really great because it sets up a reason for you to restate your claim. It gives you a good transition. It shows that you're listening to the other point of view, which is being tolerant, and really proving your point. So that covers the first two. As far as restating your claim, I think you're pretty familiar with it, so I don't want to cover it too in depth. If you want to copy it word for word, great. If you want to change a few words, great. I honestly don't care that much. I'll probably forget your exact wording from the beginning. So I don't think it's worth being like, well, I have to change 2 words. Just state it how it's natural from the counterpoint, what works, what makes the most sense. So after those 2 parts, you have a personal connection and a so what, which I kind of combine together. The personal connection, I want to be, oops, don't look at that, a sentence about how you have been affected by this. So I say, I know I have felt afraid and depressed living in a nation that's so consumed by intolerance. So there's a personal connection. And then the so what is, why should people care? Why does this argument even matter? Why even bother talking about it? And hopefully, after a whole unit talking about it, you can think of some reasons why we're talking about it and why it matters. So here's mine. This isn't just a nice thing we should try to do, but something we need to work on for the survival of our country. We need to learn from the mistakes we see in these examples and choose to find truth rather than just make quick judgments of others. We need to listen to other ideas and not reject people because they don't fit our idea of normal. We can and must be better so we can start to bring peace and healing to our society. So mine's super long because, like I said, I love conclusions. I love talking about why things matter. Yours can be 1 to 2 sentences. Just give me a good explanation of why do we even talk about stereotypes? Like why intolerance, why fear, why does any of this matter? And this is to me why I think it matters. This is what I think we should do as a result of this information. So you can use it as a call to action, explaining why it matters. You make that personal connection here to start it off. That can be, have you been stereotyped? Have you lived in a really judgy community and how has that made you feel? Have you been afraid or seen fear and how it affects your community? Whatever personal connection. You can see I'm not super specific. It's 1 sentence. It's short and sweet. You can do the exact same thing. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to say how you were stereotyped, just that you were and how it made you feel. Something like that. And then, so that's 1 sentence. Your so what is 1 to 2 sentences or more if you're like me and you can't control yourself. So yeah, that is the conclusion paragraph. And just outlining those things, you've got like a full paragraph. That's at least 4 sentences right there. So that is conclusions.